You're in the rant hole where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get a rant by becoming one of those people. This one comes from Soren Donikus. I don't know if that's racist to pronounce umlauts that way. I don't know how it's meant to be pronounced. Rant about Index and Railgun and the pace of the third season of Index. I have not seen the third season of Index because I didn't finish the second season of Index, but I do relatively like Index. From what I remember of it, and granted, this is another show where it's been quite some time since I've seen it. Um, I like that it was so ridiculous with like the world building and the powers and like just it was always about having that crazy ass twist moment where something really like violent and disturbing happens but is like justified by the weird warped logic of the story. I seem to remember a part in the second arc where the main character has to like have all of his skin torn off uh, and regenerated, and that was like part of some whatever gimmick he was doing to win the battle, just like the way the powers worked. Basically, what Index is that each arc, some new villains are introduced and some new heroes are introduced who have really fucking ridiculous powers that have extremely specific uses and extremely specific weaknesses. And exploiting those weaknesses usually involves something really absurd happening. And so when you have those crazy things happen, but they're justified in the narrative by the way that all the powers work, it's extra exciting. I mean, this is basically the whole theory of JoJo. How that entire series works is here's wacky powers and here's the insane implementations they can have. But whereas JoJo is just like non-stop action and craziness, Index is more like it's more a light novel for one thing, and a little bit more of that like dark urban fantasy feel, which I'm a huge fan of in general. I guess it kind of comes from the era of light novels that I really love and has a lot of the same traits as stuff like Boogie Pop, where the crazy undercurrent of what's going on leads to these bizarre scenarios. But whereas Boogie Pop was like supposed to be set in basically our world, except secretly there's crazy shit happening, Index is just crazy shit is happening. And like it's really funny that like core to the conceit of the show is that there is magic, which is a religious construct, and science, which is where people have X-Men powers from. So everyone accepts and believes in X-Men powers, but nobody thinks religion and magic is actually real. But they both kind of do the same type of shit. It's just that, like, by having these two different factions of what is essentially magic, it allows for the story to have more complexity and more just ridiculousness and what could go on. And like, it's just always introducing more characters, more powers, more insanity, more counterbalances to help this all make sense. So, and there's some choice waifus. Everybody likes Misaka. I think she's fine. I like Last Order more. Um, Index herself is okay. I'm trying to think if there's any characters I particularly loved. I like the best friend character. It's like a show where classmate guy turns out to be like an important badass. Like that's the kind of story it is where things that seem regular at first, everything has a crazy backstory. Everything has some kind of ludicrous powers, and it all just keeps building on itself in this chaotic mess. And the author just cranks this shit out. Like, he clearly just has anything he can imagine goes into the story. So then you got Railgun, and I really liked Railgun at first, even more than Index, because Railgun basically is a four girls show, like a slice of life show about just a bunch of cute girls hanging out, doing whatever, but where they also have superpowers and live in a superpower world. And so in the early episodes of Railgun, I was mega into it. And this is especially because this is back in the day when I was like the Moe guy. So like getting to see something that was like, just like all the other four girls shows that I liked, except also there's crazy powers and action scenes, which are well directed by Tatsuyuki Nagai, who, is pretty good at not flashy action scenes, but keeping visual direction considered all throughout, a scene. I had really liked it, but as it goes on, it gets more and more plot driven and more about crazy powers again, and I just remember getting completely fucking lost by the end of that show. Like, the amount of shit that they have to try to explain to make this insanely convoluted narrative work utterly lost me. So I never ended up watching season 2 of Railgun. I got a little bit into season 2 of Index, and all I remember is a scene where, once again, like, the confluence of all these ridiculous powers. There's a part where, like, Index is doing this, like, chant that is, like, immobilizing these nuns or, like, locking down their powers because they, whatever reason. And then in order to make it so they can get through this, they stab their own eardrums out so that they won't be able to hear the chanting. Again, just, like, crazy, hilarious, violent shit happening, and it's justified by all the circumstances surrounding it. That's all I really remember from what I watched of season 2. But I remember just kind of being like, even then it had been long enough since I'd seen the first season that I couldn't really remember the characters or what was going on. So you definitely couldn't ask me now, and that's why I didn't bother watching the third season. I don't know what's up with the pacing. I assume it's either really fast or just all over the place for you to even bring it up. But yeah, there you go.